Hey everybody, so something cool just happened. Earlier this week, I invented a brand new gambit, and I was able to use it just today against a Grandmaster and was able to win the game. So this is something I really want to share with you guys. I'll take you through it, I'll show you what it is, we'll go through some of the theory, and then we'll see this game, and we'll see how I was able to defeat a Grandmaster with this brand new opening. And if you are curious about this is something I actually did on a stream earlier this week. So I think what I'm actually going to do for this video is I'm going to put the entire VOD on the second channel. It's called Vampirechicken. There's a lot of weird stuff over there, but for anybody that maybe is interested in seeing me play this against viewers that are a little bit lower rated than the Grandmaster opponent I played today, that'll be available to you. There'll be a link in the description if you want to go ahead and check it out. But all that being said, let's jump right into it and see what this gambit is. Let's see what we're talking about. This is something you can play against the Sicilian defense, where I've been playing knight f3, the normal move, and after d6, or basically anything that black will play, I've been playing pawn to c3. And I've actually been having a really weird experience here, in that there is a certain line that it seems like only really strong players keep playing it against me. And this line is after knight f6, the normal move, bishop e2, the normal reply for white, at least the most popular move. There's tons of other moves that you can actually play already. It's this weird bishop to g4. And it's this weird thing that I guess only people, it seems like there's this weird hot zone where it's people 2000 and under, they love to play bishop to g4, and then somewhere in the middle there's people like nobody plays this at all. But then once I'm playing Grandmasters and IMs, for whatever reason I seem to encounter this move quite a bit. And it should be made clear, let's just back up one move, that there is a mini trap here that a lot of beginners will fall for, and I can prove it. If you just search by people 1600 and under, this is kind of the how to beat the Sicilian in 5 moves. Almost everybody is grabbing this, at least at a certain level. So there is already this one little mini trick. And the delayed Alapin actually has, this is a recurring theme in many positions. So this is the kind of thing that you must know. The pawn is not hanging, at least with this c-pawn already moved, because now our queen has access to the a4 square. So this would be check, black can block, but then is ultimately going to be losing a knight here, for example. Let's just put a knight down and grab this guy. So this is the basic trap. Obviously, I'm not meaning for a Grandmaster to fall for this kind of thing. It's not just some like cheapo. Bishop e2 is actually just the normal move here. And my opponent plays bishop to g4. We've talked about a lot of other moves here on the channel. But today I think there's enough to talk about that we'll just focus on this one interesting line. And here's the new gambit. Well, first, the normal move, which is castles. And again, I think we have it set to low-rated players. Again, you can see most people are grabbing this pawn, which will allow queen to a4 winning. So somehow black resisted for one move, and then they seem to fall for it on the very next move. Don't let that be you. But if your opponents do it, great. Snatch up that knight. But if we pop on everybody again, just so we have a wide variety to know kind of what everybody does. And we can also maybe look at what masters are doing too. You can see that there's basically only one move, and that's pawn to e6. There's many ways black can go wrong and lose some material, but pawn to e6 is a good way for black to continue. And the point is you're going to develop and you're going to be able to get castled. So from here, this is actually a known position, but this is where the gambit is going to begin. So this is so far completely normal for this bishop to g4 line, which actually has been played by some reasonably high-rated players. And the main moves are h3 and rook e1. There's just no doubt about it. But I discovered something very interesting. I just, to test it out, put the move pawn to d4 on the board, and just to kind of see what happens. And a really weird thing happens. The computer's like, yeah, really not that bad. Minus 0.1, so it's like, you know, you're sacrificing an entire pawn. It's really a strange thing to be doing, but the computer says that there's compensation, and this got me curious. I'm like, okay, why can I do this? How can I give up this pawn? And I started to explore it, and you can see there's 2 games here, not a whole lot to go on, and there's a lot of new ideas that can probably still be come up with in this position. There's a lot going on, and this is kind of brand new, so there's a lot of room to explore. And so I'm curious, what is up with pawn to d4? And you can already see the computer says there's one move for black to maintain this minimal advantage, and that's to take with the knight. However, most popular, at least in Lichess, is c takes d4, which is what my opponent played. So you can expect this more often than not. But one issue with this is that you're actually, and it's hard to see from a distance, but white sometimes gets access to the C file and maybe more importantly, access to the C3 square for a knight. So we should look at this and kind of see if we can come up with some of the reasons that perhaps the preferred move is here. Now, this is not what my opponent played, but this is the main line. Knight takes e4. And I will say right off the bat that there are a lot of interesting possibilities for white. I believe, don't play d takes c5. That doesn't seem to make any sense to me. Black will just recapture. But there's interesting ideas of playing a combination of d5 and rook to e1 in these positions. And where to actually start? D5, this actually can lead to a super amazing trap that I really hope to get one day. There's one really, really beautiful potential trap. And the point of playing D5, we are a pawn down, we must take that into account, but we are going to try to get some sort of initiative. And the initiative often comes by attacking this pawn. That's one of our deeper combinations. We're going to be trying to create some weaknesses in the center. But temporarily, we've also created some tactical opportunities. Like, again, if black is careless, you're going to get hit with queen to a4, which is going to be a check winning the knight. At every turn, black should be really cautious about this, which is why you'll see most people have played knight to f6. So now they're defending the bishop, so there's no queen to a4, at least if you play queen to a4, which might be a fine move. You're not actually threatening to win a bishop anymore. And also, it looks like black might be threatening to take on d5. Now here, I did have this one time, and I played for a little bit of a cheapo. I believe the best move is actually rook to e1, lining up with this king, which can be very dangerous, as we'll see soon. I had this one time, and it's a little bit embarrassing. I actually lost this game. I played h3 because I was hopeful that my opponent would go back. And instead, what happens is my opponent here actually played best. I'll come back. I'll show you this really cool trap that you can play that maybe somebody else will be able to beat me to it and get it first. But after bishop takes f3, I took back and my opponent shut it down. So this is actually probably the proper way for the opponents to play. But even here, it's interesting. We're a pawn down. We have two bishops, and it's weird. I don't 100% see the compensation, and I actually played around with this position for a little bit. It's only very, very slightly worse for black. So I knew I wasn't risking too much when I went into this. And I do hate to bring up some bad memories, but I will speed through this game. It didn't work out for me. I do remember kind of what happened. I got crushed on the queen side during this game. And then, if I remember right, I also got some sort of an attack. At some point, we took a little bit of turns. He was winning for quite a while. I missed a win. I actually have a really beautiful move here. Computer is giving it away. I have this distracting the bishop from the defense of f6. But, you know, he was winning, and then every other move. This was not the model game. This was every other move. One of us is winning. And then eventually I hang my queen, if I remember right. Yeah, I just hung my queen. So not the best game. But a good so maybe people, if you do play for this, you can come up with something a little bit better than that. But what I was playing for, this is the trap after h3, and there's a reason I wasn't playing rook to e1 first. It's because I was hopeful for this, where then I would play rook to e1. And I've been very crafty. The reason was to be a little bit crafty, removing this bishop from the threat of queen to a4, hoping the opponent would play this move. Knight takes d5. And I'll give you just a second here to see if you can spot the very best move, because it looks kind of ridiculous. It looks like white has played very bad on multiple levels, and black has just taken an insanely crucial pawn. So if we don't have this tactic, we would just be in horrible shape. And that tactic is the unbelievable queen sacrifice. Queen takes d5. And this really emphasizes the power of this rook on e1. And this is what I was really hoping for. It seems like something the opponents really might not see coming. But the point, of course, is if they recapture, we hit them with bishop to b5, double check mate. So this would have been just a game ender. And this is a queen sacrifice that's never happened, but it's an idea that I kind of found. There's a lot of really cool resources if you dig into this kind of position. Also should be mentioned, if in this position they take with a pawn, it's the same exact mating idea. Where it's just a double checkmate. So that's what I was playing for. And that's also the reason for playing h3. I do believe rook e1 is actually the better move. But now people probably will not be taking here with d5 because maybe they see queen to a4 winning the bishop. Although even here, the best move again is just to play queen takes d5, where black is unable to recapture due to the checkmating threat. So, okay, there was some cool stuff there. A lot to still be explored. But anyways, running it back one more time. After this bishop to g4, we're saying castles e6, d4, and there's still quite a bit to be figured out after knight takes e4, but I do want to share what happened in the game that I just played against the Grandmaster. He played the more common move, c takes d4. I recaptured, and now black takes back. And it's actually very interesting. I've kind of spoiled it. The engine is saying it's plus 0.8, but only after a very specific move here by white, and that's the move pawn to d5. Now, this is something I actually knew during the game, but I've intentionally allowed something by playing rook to e1. Now, we did transpose in the game. If d5, black is almost certainly going to be playing knight to f6. Maybe there's some other possibilities with the same ideas, and this actually, after rook to e1, will transpose back to what happened in the game. But I do want to share one interesting line that's absolutely amazing. You give up like all of your pieces, and and it's always like equal somehow. I was going to play, well, I did play, this is the actual game. I played rook to e1, and my opponent went back to f6. If instead d5, which is what the computer wants to do, and the computer says, okay, the reason rook e1 is inaccurate is because I just played d5. I support the pawn. Now there's no checks or anything. Knight is extra protected against the threat, which I should mention we actually did make a threat. I believe there was some game in the Lichess database somewhere where somebody didn't defend this knight, but obviously if you don't defend this knight, we do have some sort of revealed attack going on. So make sure, as black, you want to make sure you're defending this knight either by d5 or dropping back. If d5, check this out. This is just crazy computer engine analysis. I was going to play queen to b3. And here one person played queen d7, which is a very bad move. It runs into knight to e5. So sadness for the one opponent that ever played that. But if instead queen to b6, there's this really crazy engine line. And it starts with not trading queens, bishop to b5. So if, for example, knight to c6, you have the option of playing knight to e5, which is possibly a very decent move. But check this out. There is another move other than knight to e5 that I was going to play. And that's the move rook takes e4. And I had a game very similar to this against a viewer that you'll be able to see if you do check out that VOD. But this is absolutely an amazing idea. The point is, if you don't take the rook, obviously you probably will take the rook. If you don't take the rook, we'll just simply drop back. And there's still this pin here, so black needs to solve the issue of the bishop, but because of the pin, we're also threatening to take on d5. So black should probably go to like g4, allowing us to take on d5, because if they go somewhere else, if they go to h5, we'll be taking here, but we're also now attacking the bishop, and white gets the pawn back. So this isn't the end of the world. I mean, black can keep playing chess and move the bishop back and get developed and try to castle. It's not the end of things, but it does give the pawn back. So you would expect most players to take the rook. Now comes knight e5. I would assume a human would play here, bishop to f5. And just check this out. I actually will turn the engine on just so you can see. It's 3 pawns down, but incredibly, it's approximately equal. If anything, maybe black does have a slight advantage. Let's say g4, forcing the bishop back, bishop f4. And I wouldn't worry too much about memorizing all of this, although I have, because it's just, I want to show just how crazy this can be. Keep an eye on how much material we've sacrificed. Here you can even play d5. And after pawn takes, not the recapture with the queen, but knight to c3. Still a little bit better, but is +4. For example, if black decides to develop, now we can take back. Let's say queen to d8, you might expect a human to play something like rook to d1 in this kind of position, lining up with the queen, but there's even bishop to a4. This is just some crazy computer line, where now you can take on b7 temporarily undefending this knight. But after captures, we can recapture on c6. We're threatening discoveries against the queen. So black is basically forced to sacrifice something like this, queen to e6, attacking this, keeping an eye on here. We play h3, and probably black has some sort of slight advantage going into this endgame. Probably some better attacking prospects, something like h5 could be coming. But okay, you memorize all of this and you get a slight advantage with black, but this is all kind of crazy. I wouldn't expect an unprepared human to find any of this over the board. Windows update? No, thank you. So this was the kind of thing that I allowed. That's why back in this position, I played rook to e1 rather than d5. Again, d5, probably objectively the best way to play. But rook e1, he did go back, and now I play d5. So this is basically what we could have done via a different move order. Now, my opponent played bishop to e7. This is the correct move. Again, if here, I would not be winning the bishop. I'd be hitting you with one of these. And then I'd be running around town so happy. It'd be like, you wouldn't even recognize me. One more time. Let's just put it on the board because it's so sweet. Double checkmate. You can only dream. All you can do is dream. But instead, my opponent played the best move, which is bishop to e7. And we've now transposed into another game. There's another game in the database. I took here. And I knew that my opponent had to take back with the bishop. Which is what was played. If you take back with a pawn, this seems like an alternative, but this is kind of a typical pawn structure that you might get in a middle game if you do play this variation, where it turns out there's a lot of weaknesses on all of these light squares. And white can begin to get an advantage in a couple different ways here. H3 is probably a very reasonable move, asking white to do something with the bishop. I do kind of have a preference for knight to g5. This is very direct, threatening the bishop, threatening to do some stuff here on e6. And as you'll see, if they do recapture, we can actually recapture with the rook, attacking this again. And if this thing ever moves, we have moves like queen to b3. And there's always going to be issues on these light squares, not to mention some sort of knight to e6 hopping in here. This should lead to a lot of different problems immediately out of the opening. Definitely for a pawn, you have a huge, huge initiative here as white. So it's for that reason that my opponent decided to take back with the bishop. And this is actually where I got hit with my first new move. Knight g5 is what I had prepped. And what I was ready for was castles. My opponent played bishop to d5. The line that I'm a little more ready for, and I guess I'll hide this now, is here. For example, I can now take back and play bishop to f3. This is the computer line where I'm now attacking two different pawns. My bishop is attacking this way. My rook is attacking e6. And if, for example, black does defend them both, this is the only way to do it, queen to d7, I would play queen to e2. And what I'm trying to do in this kind of position, just to show how you can get some compensation for the pawn, is I'm trying to provoke weaknesses on this diagonal. So I have access to c4 in the future, but for the present, I can play knight to c3, keeping a lock on the d5 square for the moment. And the computer line goes like this. Knight to c6, hopping in to attack my queen. Knight d5, knight d4. After this capture, it can take back either way, but the main point for white is we want to get this bishop into the game, play something like queen to e4. This would be kind of the line that the engine recommended. This is what I was prepared for. And we are down a pawn. However, we have two bishops, in particular this one. This guy is currently doing an excellent job. I have a little bit of a battery. Maybe I'm threatening to win a pawn back. Also, if I ever get an attack, this could be a very useful bishop to have. I'm just shutting off this diagonal. Okay, maybe one day I can swing a rook over to h3. We can begin making some sort of pressure. Should be some sort of ways to generate threats. Also, I have like bishop e3 at some point if I ever need to get rid of this knight. And something like this, I think the computer does give a slight advantage to black. So this would be black playing really well. This is the kind of thing you risk, is these little advantages, but I think in a practical game, this would be a totally fine thing that I'd be willing to try to play. Computers like pawns, though, so they just develop their pieces and carry on like nothing's happening. But anyways, that's what I was prepared for, but my opponent surprised me. What happened in the game was we got to this position, and he came up with a really good move. He came up with bishop to d5. This is the move that I didn't know I was ready for castles. And it makes a ton of sense. He saves the bishop. He's not giving away the bishop. And he's just going to park the bishop on c6. And I will admit, around here, I did really start to get outplayed. I played knight to c3. Okay, not so bad. He goes back. And this is where I missed my chance to play kind of an amazing, you could say it's a computer idea. Strong players will be like, yeah, no, this is a normal idea. And okay, sure. But there is an idea here that I could have played to maybe take advantage of the fact that the bishop is on c6. And that move, the move I should have played, what did I play? I played bishop c4. What a patzer. My idea was to goad black into playing d5 to put a pawn in front of his bishop. Instead, I could have played b4. This is the computer's idea, and it thinks this is good for white. You can play a6 to stop me, but at some point I'll play here. I'll develop my bishop to b2, and I'll play b5. Like if castles, bishop here, and now I'm going to play b5 next against basically anything, and that's going to force your bishop to go somewhere where maybe it doesn't exactly want to go. Of course, my knight is also going to get pushed back at some point, but maybe this gives me a little bit more interesting prospects. So if I ever get this again, keep this b4 move in mind. Instead, I played bishop to c4. And my idea was, if you play d5, which you can do now, or I'm probably going to force them to do later, you're at least putting something in the way of your pawn, and then maybe I'll be able to blockade the d4 square. And that's kind of what happened. I played bishop to f4, again, kind of just a goading move, hoping he'll move his pawn, and I will drop back. And in my head, I'm thinking, okay, these guys might be able to make some sort of alignment. I do expect at some point that this knight is going to get kicked back. And I'm thinking, okay, I maneuver a knight to d4, and then from there, who knows, I go to f5, something, maybe I get some sort of an attack going. But he comes up with this move, which is just a fantastic move. Knight to a6. And it's very interesting because he can't go to the normal square, which would be c6. But it turns out he's just going to c5, and this is actually going to be a fantastic square for the knight. It's probably going to force my bishop back unless I want to let it get traded, and it's going to do some real damage. It's going to be able to hop into e4, and it's not really clear that I have anything going for the pawn. I'm just getting outplayed. I play knight to e2. I'm going here. I'm looking at squares. He kicks my knight away. I knew it would happen at some point. Now he attacks my bishop. I save it, and he hops on in. And okay, there's really nothing. I mean, I don't think that I have anything here for the pawn. And now the opponent plays rook to c8. I hop in to e5. Queen to b6, which is given a question mark. I'm not actually sure what the computer would like for black to play in this position. We can check it out. Oh, computer wants bishop to b4, which is a little tricky. And then after rook to e2, bishop to c5. This is kind of close to what happened in the game, only he's provoked me to go here. So there's some computer stuff going on, but whatever. Queen to b6 made a lot of sense to me during the game. And now I play f3. And this is probably my biggest undoing, at least so far. You already know the result of the game, but this was probably not a very good move. People should make a rule about this. There should be some kind of rule telling me never to play this move, but I played f3. And the opponent went here. This is where I remember the computer actually has something a little more savage. This is another situation where now this is even more powerful. Obviously, my point of f3 is that if you go somewhere, you're going to lose a piece. I'm going to be taking here, and my next move will be to go here. So black needs to do something about this, which is why the opponent played bishop to c5. Computer doesn't like it because this is even stronger. Now if rook to e2, now bishop to b5, and my rook gets trapped. This knight is pinned because I moved my f-pawn. So, okay, some savage stockfish stuff, but this should be pretty good for black as well. Now my knight is attacked. Hold on, phone call. It's my mom. I got to take this. Always answer when your mom calls. All right, my mom is coming over. We got about 30 minutes to figure out the rest of this video. So my opponent plays bishop to c5. I defend my knight. Now comes knight to d6. And here, so I'm getting outplayed. This is very obvious. There is a move. I did see it, but not enough. I did consider playing the best move here, but I didn't see the follow-up that is correct. I played king to h1, just getting out of this pin. A computer hates it. Instead, I could have played this move, pawn to b4. And you know I'm in bad shape because it's actually my only move in this position. So I'm running into a situation where I basically only have one move. So my position is pretty tough. I knew that he couldn't take with the bishop. If you take with the bishop, then there is some sort of alignment going on here. So I'd be able to move. Let's say I'd be able to take this, just winning some material. I saw queen takes, but I only saw rook to b1. And I'm like, I don't know, he'll move somewhere. He'll go here. And I wasn't really sure what I had accomplished. However, that's not the main point of playing b4. Maybe you can pause and see if you want to play better than me, go right ahead. I could have, in this position, played knight to d3. And this will at least let me get rid of this really pesky bishop. The bishop on c5 is so strong. I would definitely, if I would have seen this, I definitely would have given up a pawn in order to be able to take that bishop on the next move. But okay, we're getting outplayed. We're getting crushed. Then another thing happened pretty soon. I took this bishop. Not great. He takes back. I play another sort of basic developing move. I know I'm kind of in bad shape here. And now he takes this, which I'm not sure if I thought he was going to do that. There's something stronger than this, apparently. We'll have to check it out. He could have played knight to c4. Knight to c4 looks very, very, very strong. Because now if I move my bishop back anywhere, let's say I go all the way back, at some point he's going to be able to take this. He takes this right away. And if I take back, he's removed a defender of d4. So opponent does miss. Another nice tactic, but I'm sure he's still doing very well after this move. I'm kind of getting crushed. I play rook to e7. And after takes, rook b1, it was around here that something happened. My children came running, and they wanted to talk to me about Pokemon, which was very important. But it was also, even though a little distracting, it was a blessing in disguise. Because now, while talking about Pokemon, I began playing random moves very quickly, which was the winning strategy from this position. I now begin to pick up the pace immensely. We both have approximately 30 seconds. I have a little bit less time than my opponent. So I make some random moves. This was the key to my success. None of these moves were well thought out at all. I was very distracted. Now I'm hoping he takes this. I can go here. Instead, random moves all the way. And at some point here, I am like winning, I believe. At some miracle point. Yeah, right here, I miss a win. Okay, we both have 5 seconds. He has just walked into a pin. So I could have smashed him with queen takes g6. This would have been the proper way to win immediately. I didn't see it, and I'm playing fast. I went like this. And then I played, to win on time. That's how we do it when the kids are talking to us about Pokemon. I hang my queen, and I win the game on time. So you can say what you want. You can say in the comments, hey, that's unfair, bad sportsmanship. Say whatever you want. That's what the comment section's for. Or you could be nice in the comment section, and you could say things like, hey, man, what a cool gambit. I will definitely try this one out. I don't know. What do you think? D4, is it good? Let me know. See ya.
If you're feeling trapped like a queen, no blunders, only sacrifice and see. Well, you may have the blues. Never be a chicken when you lose.